Greetings, class. I'm filming this at the towards the end of week 8. I've just assessed your IRRs and your RTOs for week 8. And I have to say that by and large, things looked really well. Many of you did a very good job in both your IRRs as well as your responding to others, your RTOs. So I just wanted to take a few minutes, hopefully not too many minutes, and highlight a few things for you to think about and point out a few things as you prepare to submit your IOWs. First of all, the first point I wanted to make is that many of you touched on the aspect of what risk assessment is trying to do is predict behavior. And if there's one thing that we hopefully have learned so far in all the readings that we've done is that human behavior is very difficult to predict. Nonetheless, there are ways, actuarial ways, the ways that are based on research and statistical analyses that can give us some idea of the likelihood that someone's going to commit a new crime. But as many of you pointed out, no method of predicting future criminal behavior is foolproof. For example, low-risk people do, some of them, not many, but some of them do commit an additional crime. High-risk people are more likely to commit a new crime, but not all of them commit a new crime. So many of you rightfully touched on the idea that human behavior is very difficult to predict. The second item that I wanted to touch on is that many of you in your writings and in your back and forths, I saw a lot of very healthy exchanges in the discussion groups, and so thank you for that and for that effort. But many of you really touched on the complexity of sentencing. Sentencing is a sacred thing in many respects in our criminal justice system. It's at the point of sentencing at which a judge is handing out justice, for lack of a better term, handing out punishment, for lack of a better term, or not, or making a decision not to punish, as the case may be. And so I really want to congratulate you on the extent to which the complexities that surround sentencing really did come out in your writing. So good job on that regard. In addition, and likewise or similarly, many of you rightfully reverted in a good way back to some of the discussions we were having early on this semester about the philosophies of punishment. Many of you, it may not be evident on the immediate surface, but you don't have to read too far into much of what you were writing to figure out that what you all were really struggling with is the philosophy of punishment, the purpose of corrections, and that's largely, to a large degree, what this class is all about. What do we want out of our sentences to prison? What do we expect out of our sentences to probation? And many of you likewise rightfully went back and forth between, is it retribution? Do we just want, if we're just sentencing people, punishing people based on what they did most recently, then our philosophy is somewhat retributive in nature, right? An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. You committed a crime, you get a certain punishment. You commit a different crime, you get a slightly different punishment. So many of you, again, congratulations on reverting back to the discussion of philosophy of punishment, because clearly that whole subject area, philosophy of punishment, has a place at the table in this discussion when we talk about sentencing based on risk assessment. In addition, many of you, and rightfully so, based especially on one of the articles, talked a lot about race. I will say that having read these articles, that the extent to which it was purported that race directly comes into play on risk assessments, I think it is my judgment that was somewhat overblown. Now, that said, and gender as well, both race and gender, that said, I think it's only fair to bring into the discussion the extent to which we do have disparity in a lot of things in this country. Opportunity is not spread evenly across all areas of this country, across all demographics of this country. It's just not. As such, while many risk assessments don't assess race and gender, as one of your articles in particular was purporting, risk and need assessments do assess other things that may approximate race. And again, that came out fairly clearly in many of your writings, and so that was good as well. Another thing I'd like to throw out there is there may very well, and we could probably have a whole class period about this, there may very well be a difference between fairness and justice. A couple of you had a very healthy exchange related to this, and I would ask you the question, does justice have to be fair? Is what's fair also just? I mean, those are really. I'm not necessarily doing that subject matter due diligence in this particular video segment, but it's an important question. And I ask you: is there a difference between justice and fairness? It even calls into question: what do we mean by justice? What is justice? So that's something to consider that may or may not help you as you move forward into conducting your IOR or your IOWs. Last, and I will end on this note, is that some of you made a little bit of a mistake in your writing and made it sound as if sentencing only occurred in the instance of assigning a prison sentence to somebody, and that's not true. Judges sentence, okay, that's to a large extent of what judges do, or sentencing is, for some judges, is a lot of what they do. Judges make decisions. They make decisions about what to do with someone in response to an offense that they've been convicted of. All right. So someone commits an offense, or they are accused of committing offense, as the case may be. They are found guilty, and they are found guilty either via a plea bargain, either via a trial, or simply an admission of guilt. All right. Now, once that occurs, once it's been established in the eyes of the court, in the eyes of the law, that someone has been convicted of a crime, then sentencing comes into play. Now, in some cases and in some states, judges have guidelines. Sometimes they are strict guidelines, sometimes they are soft guidelines, but many times judges have guidelines, and they have some latitude, they have some discretion as to whether or as to what sort of sentence to give somebody in response to the crime that they committed and the crime that they were found through some mechanism guilty of. In some cases, the sentence can include prison. In some cases, the sentence will include jail. In some cases, the sentence will include probation. Nobody, in effect, is sentenced to parole. Again, we're getting back to something that I kind of harped on earlier, the difference between probation and parole. In practice, the two things look somewhat similar. In principle, the two things are very different, so keep that in mind. But when you talk about sentencing just doesn't have to do with prison. Judges make decisions about how to sentence somebody, and in some cases, judges will make the decision to sentence someone to prison. In some cases, they'll make the decision to sentence someone to probation or jail, or a combination thereof. Sentencing is a whole ball of wax that we could likewise spend a lot of time on. So I will leave it there. I hope you're enjoying your Saturday. For the most part, much improved in many respects this week, so please keep up the good work. I know this reading was pretty dense. There were some cases for a few of you, not many thankfully, that it was apparent that you that you weren't using the material at all, but that was fortunately that was the exception as opposed to the rule. So have a great weekend, and I will hopefully hear from you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.